I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. The air's still cool and heavy with that quiet promise of a new day. My name's Cole Mercer, and I'm 34 years old, a guy who's spent years perfecting the art of being invisible. I slip out of bed, careful not to wake Bianca, my wife, who's sprawled across the sheets like she owns the world, which, in a way, she does. Her family, the Sinclairs, are old money, Charleston royalty, and I'm the nobody they let into the castle. Downstairs, I pull on my jeans and a plain t-shirt, grab my keys, and head to my coffee shop, Bean and Ground. It's a small place, all exposed brick and warm lights, tucked on a corner of downtown where the tourists wander and the locals linger. People think it's my whole life, this little shop with its humming espresso machine and chalkboard specials. They see me behind the counter, apron tied around my waist, steaming milk or wiping down tables, and they figure that's all I am, a barista with a decent smile and a steady hand. Bianca's father, Gregory Sinclair, calls me the coffee boy when he's feeling generous, which isn't often. His voice is all gravel and judgment, like he's spitting out a bad taste every time he says my name. He's a real estate king, a man who builds towers and buys loyalty with a flick of his wrist, and to him, I'm just the guy his daughter dragged home one day, a stray she decided to keep. I don't mind it, not really. I've been playing this part for years now, quiet, simple, unassuming. It's easier that way. They don't ask questions, don't dig past the surface. Gregory's never wondered why I don't complain about the bills or how I keep the shop running without begging for his handouts. Bianca's never noticed the late-night calls I take in the office upstairs or the way I slip out 4 errands that stretch into hours. They see what they want, a guy who's good with his hands, who knows his place, who doesn't rock their perfect little boat. And I let them. I pour their lattes, nod at their small talk, and keep my mouth shut. It's not like I'm lying, not exactly. The shop's real enough. I love the smell of fresh grounds, the hiss of the steamer, the way people soften when they take that first sip. It's mine, a piece of me I built from scratch. But it's not the whole story. Not even close. See, I've got secrets they'd never guess. The shop's just a front, a cozy little mask I wear while the real me moves in the shadows. I own things, big things. Companies, properties, accounts they'd choke on if they knew. But I don't flaunt it. I drive a beat-up truck to work, park it out back where no one cares to look. The fancy cars, the ones registered under a holding company nobody's heard of, stay tucked away in a garage across town. My assistant, a sharp woman named Tara, handles the real business, meetings with bankers, investors, CEOs who don't know my face until I want them to. I've got a system, a rhythm, and it works because nobody suspects a thing. Why would they? I'm just Cole, the guy who married up, the one they pat on the head and forget about. Gregory's too busy counting his millions to notice the way I watch him, the way I listen when he brags about his latest deal. Bianca's too caught up in her charity luncheons and designer dresses to see the papers I sign when she's asleep. They think I'm small, and I let them. It's safer that way for now. This morning, the shop's quiet when I unlock the door. I flip on the lights, start the grinder, and let the routine take over. The first customer's an older guy, a regular who likes his coffee black and his newspapers crisp. He nods at me, mumbles something about the weather, and I nod back. It's simple, this life I show them. Comfortable. But as I wipe down the counter, I can't help thinking about last night. Another dinner at the Sinclair mansion, another round of Gregory's jabs. How's the coffee game, Cole? He'd asked, smirking over his whiskey. Keeping the lights on? The table laughed. Bianca squeezed my hand under the cloth, and I just smiled. They don't know I could buy that mansion twice over and still have cash to burn. They don't know I've been watching, waiting, letting them dig their own graves with every word. One day, they'll see. One day, I'll step out from behind this counter and show them who I really am. But not yet. For now, I pour another cup, listen to the hum of the morning, and keep my secrets close. The game's still mine to play. The air feels thick tonight, heavy with the scent of money and perfume as I step into the Sinclair Company Gala. It's their annual show-off, held at some 5-star resort just outside Charleston where the chandeliers drip crystals and the waiters glide around with trays of caviar like it's no big deal. I'm Cole Mercer, and I'm here because Bianca begged me to come. She's in her element, shimmering in a silver dress that hugs her like a second skin, her blonde hair swept up in a way that screams elegance. Me, I'm in a navy suit, tailored, sharp, something I designed myself through a quiet little fashion venture I've never told anyone about. It's not flashy, but it fits me like it was born on my shoulders. I walk beside her, my hand resting light on her back, and I can feel the eyes on us, or on her, Mostly. I'm just the shadow, the guy who doesn't quite belong. We step into the ballroom, and it's like walking into a painting. Everything's gold and glass, the orchestra humming in the corner, people laughing too loud because they've got nothing real to say. Bianca's already drifting, kissing cheeks and tossing hellos like confetti. I hang back, grab a drink from a passing tray, something clear and sharp, and let the room swirl around me. Gregory's here, of course, holding court near the center, his gray hair slicked back, his tuxedo screaming power. He spots me across the crowd, gives me that half nod he thinks passes for manners, and turns back to his buddies. I'm not worth more than that to him. Never have been. I sip my drink, the ice clinking against the crystal, and wonder how long I've got to stay before I can slip out for air. These nights always feel like a performance, and I'm the understudy nobody bothered to rehearse. Then it happens, the toast. Gregory climbs up to the little stage, taps his glass with a spoon, and the room hushes like he's some kind of king. He's all smiles, that smug grin that says he owns every soul here. Some of us, he starts, his voice booming, build empires from scratch. We carve our names into the world, brick by brick. He pauses, lets the applause ripple, then his eyes find me. Others, well, they serve cappuccinos. The laugh hits like a wave, rolling through the crowd, sharp and cruel. Bianca's cousins snicker behind their hands. Some guy in a bow tie claps like it's the funniest thing he's heard all year. My fingers tighten around my glass, the cold biting into my skin, but I don't flinch. I smile instead, small, easy, like it doesn't faze me. Let them laugh. Let them think I'm the punchline. They've been doing it for years, and I've learned to wear it like a second suit. I take a slow breath, feel the anger simmering low in my chest, but I don't let it show. They don't know a damn thing. They don't know that this suit I'm wearing came from a company I own, one that's got orders stacked up from New York to Miami. They don't know I've got a stake in half the buildings Gregory brags about, hidden under layers of paperwork and fake names. And they sure as hell don't know I own the bank that's keeping his whole operation afloat right now. Eastbridge Capital. It's mine, every dime of it, and Gregory's emergency loans are sitting on my desk, waiting for my pin. One signature, that's all it'd take to pull the plug. I could end him tonight if I wanted to, watch that smug face crumple when he realizes who's been holding the strings. But I don't. Not yet. I sip my drink again, let the burn slide down my throat, and keep my eyes on him. He's still grinning, soaking up the applause, oblivious to the fact he's roasting the guy who could bury him. Bianca floats back to me, her perfume soft and sweet, and slips her arm through mine. You okay? She whispers, her voice low enough that no one else hears. I nod, give her a quick smile. Fine, I say, and it's not a lie. I've been through worse than a room full of rich idiots laughing at me. She squeezes my arm, and for a second, I wonder if she knows, if she's ever suspected there's more to me than the coffee shop and the quiet nods. But then she's off again, pulled into a circle of women with diamond earrings and fake laughs, and I'm alone with my thoughts. The night drags on, all speeches and small talk, and I play my part, shake hands, make jokes, let them think I'm harmless. They don't see the way I catalog every word, every smirk. They don't know I'm counting the seconds until I can turn this game upside down. As the orchestra picks up again, I finish my drink and set the glass down hard. One day, they'll choke on that laughter. One day, they'll see who's really pouring the shots around here. But tonight, I just stand there, the invisible son-in-law, letting them have their fun. It's a quiet morning at Bean and Ground, the kind I live for. Soft sunlight spilling through the windows, the smell of fresh coffee beans grinding into something warm and alive. I'm Cole Mercer, and this place is my sanctuary, my little corner of the world where I can breathe. I'm behind the counter, apron on, steaming milk for a latte while a couple of regulars chat about the weather at a table by the door. They nod at me, I nod back, and it's easy, like it always is here. People think this is all I've got, this cozy shop with its wooden stools and handwritten menu. They see me wiping down the espresso machine, hear me call out orders, and figure I'm just a guy who lucked into marrying Bianca Sinclair. They're not wrong about the luck part. She's beautiful, sharp, the kind of woman who lights up a room, but they're dead wrong about the rest. This shop's not my whole story. It's barely a page. Years ago, I was a different man. I had a startup, nothing huge, just a tech idea I cooked up in a cramped apartment with too much coffee and not enough sleep. It was a platform for small businesses, something to help them track sales, manage inventory, keep the lights on. I poured everything into it, and when a bigger company came sniffing around, I sold it. 8 figures, modest by some standards, but enough to change my life. I didn't blow it on cars or a mansion. I'm not that guy. Instead, I reinvested, quietly, carefully. I built Eastbridge Capital, a holding company nobody's heard of because I made damn sure they wouldn't. It's got its fingers in banks, fintech startups, real estate deals stretching across 3 states. I own pieces of the world Gregory Sinclair thinks he rules, and he doesn't even know it. My name's nowhere near the letterhead, intentionally. I've got people like Tara, my assistant, running the show out front while I stay in the shadows. Freedom's what I wanted, not fame, and this setup gives me that. The coffee shop came later. I bought it on a whim after Bianca and I got married. A little place that was going under until I turned it around. It's not a front, not exactly. It's real, something I love. I like the rhythm of it, the way the grinder hums and the customers smile when I slide their drinks across the counter. It's my retreat, a place where I can step away from the suits and the boardrooms and just be Cole. But it's also my cover. Nobody looks twice at a guy pulling shots of espresso all day. They don't wonder where the money comes from, how I afford the house Bianca and I live in, or why I don't flinch when Gregory tosses his insults my way. They see the apron and stop asking questions. It's perfect, really. Lets me move through their world without them ever suspecting I'm playing a bigger game. This morning, as I hand a black coffee to a guy in a faded jacket, I think about how it all started. Back when I sold that startup, I could have gone loud, bought a yacht, flashed the cash, made sure everyone knew my name. But that's not me. I grew up with nothing, just a single mom who worked doubles to keep us fed. I learned early that loud gets you noticed, but quiet gets you power. So I built my empire brick by brick, silent as a whisper, and watched it grow. Eastbridge isn't just some side gig, it's a machine. Mid-sized banks answer to me, fintech apps I funded top the charts, and real estate portfolios fatten my accounts while I'm here steaming oat milk. I've got 3 hedge fund managers on my payroll, guys who'd laugh if they saw me in this apron. Sometimes I laugh too, thinking about it. Like when Bianca's cousin smirked at me last week and said, "He makes great lattes." I just grinned and said, "Yeah, I also signed the payroll for 3 hedge fund managers." He thought I was joking. They all do. I finish the latte, slide it to a woman with a laptop and a tired smile, and wipe my hands on a towel. The shop's humming now, a steady flow of people coming in for their morning fix. I move through it like I always do, calm, steady, letting them see the version of me they're comfortable with. But in my head, I'm somewhere else. I'm thinking about the calls I'll take later, the deals Tara's lining up, the numbers I'll crunch when the shop closes. This life I've built, it's a balancing act, 1 foot in their world, 1 foot in mine. Gregory thinks he's the king. Bianca thinks I'm her sweet, simple husband, and I let them. It's safer that way. Keeps the pieces in place until I'm ready to move them. As I pour another shot of espresso, the steam rising in soft curls, I feel that familiar itch, the one that says this mask won't fit forever. One day, I'll take it off. One day they'll see. But for now, I'm just the guy with the coffee, and that's enough. The night air hits me like a slap when I step out onto the terrace, the gala's noise fading into a dull hum behind me. I'm Cole Mercer, and I've had enough of the chandeliers and fake smiles for one evening. My navy suit feels tight, not because it doesn't fit, it's perfect, but because I'm carrying more than anyone in that room knows. I lean against the railing, the ocean breeze tugging at my hair, and take a deep breath. The crystal glass in my hand's empty now, just ice rattling around, and I'm thinking about heading back to the truck when I hear heels clicking on the stone behind me. I turn, and there's Layla Cross, Gregory's assistant, her dark hair pulled tight and her eyes darting like she's scared someone's watching. She's young, maybe 28, sharp as a tack, and the only one in the Sinclair orbit who's ever looked at me like I might be more than a coffee pourer. "Sir," she says, her voice low, almost a whisper, "we need your bank's approval." The loan paperwork was flagged for emergency review. I raise an eyebrow, keeping my face steady even as my pulse kicks up a notch. "Emergency?" I ask, casual, like I'm just making conversation. She nods, her hands twisting together. "Yes, Mr. Sinclair's Midtown project is collapsing. Without that loan, everything folds." Her words hang there, heavy, and I let them settle. The Midtown project, Gregory's big gamble, a shiny tower he's been bragging about for months. I've seen the numbers, the ones he doesn't show the public, because my bank's the one holding his leash. Eastbridge Capital's got the files, and I've got the pen. I nod slowly, letting a flicker of something, maybe amusement, dance in my eyes. Tell Mr. Sinclair I'll review it in the morning. I say, calm as if I'm talking about the weather. Layla freezes, her mouth parting just a little, and I see it click. Her eyes widen, searching my face like she's seeing me for the first time. Not Cole the coffee guy. Cole, the CEO of Eastbridge Capital. The guy who could snap his fingers and sink her boss. She doesn't say anything for a second, just stands there, and I can almost hear the gears turning in her head. She starts, then stops, like she's afraid to finish. I don't help her out, just tilt my head and wait. Okay, she finally says, backing up a step. I'll tell him. She turns and hurries off, her heels clicking faster now, and I'm alone again with the night. I set the glass on the railing, the ice glinting under the terrace lights, and let out a slow breath. This is it, the first crack in the mask I've worn for years. Layla's smart. She'll figure it out, maybe even whisper it to someone else. But I'm not worried. I've been waiting for a moment like this, a chance to let the truth peek out without me having to shout it. Gregory's in trouble, and he doesn't even know it's me holding the lifeline. That toast he gave earlier, the one where he roasted me in front of his fancy friends, echoes in my head. Others serve cappuccinos, he'd said, and they'd laughed. Now he's the one begging, and I'm the one deciding. I shove my hands in my pockets and stare out at the water, the waves rolling in soft and steady. I could sign off on that loan tonight. Keep his project afloat. Let him keep strutting around like the king he thinks he is. Or I could let it sit, let him sweat, let him figure out how deep he's dug himself. Eastbridge has the power here, and I've got Eastbridge. It's a strange feeling, standing out here with the wind in my face, knowing I've got a man like Gregory Sinclair by the throat, and he doesn't even see it yet. I think about the shop, the quiet mornings, the way I built this whole other life while they all looked the other way. The coffee's real. I love it, always will, but it's the smallest piece of me. Out here, under the stars, I feel the weight of everything else. The banks, the deals, the millions I've stacked up while they laughed. Layla's reaction sticks with me, though. That look in her eyes, shock, maybe respect, tells me the game's shifting. She's the first one to see past the apron, and it's a rush, like stepping out of a shadow I've been hiding in too long. I don't know what she'll do with it. Run to Gregory, keep it quiet, maybe just watch and wait. Doesn't matter. The seed's planted now, and I'm ready for whatever grows. I pick up the glass again, roll it between my fingers, and think about tomorrow. I'll go into the office, not the shop, the real office, and pull those loan papers. I'll sit at my desk, the one with my name in brass, and decide what happens next. Gregory's fate's in my hands, and for once, I'm not invisible. The gala's still buzzing behind me, but out here, it's just me and the truth. I smile to myself, small and sharp, and head back inside. One way or another, morning's gonna be interesting. The sun's barely up when I pull into the parking lot of Eastbridge Capital's downtown office, the truck's engine rumbling low as I kill it. I'm Cole Mercer, and today's the day I stop playing small. I step out, my boots hitting the pavement, and tug my jacket straight. Nothing fancy, just a gray blazer over a white shirt. But it's enough. The building's sleek, all glass and steel, the kind of place Gregory Sinclair would strut into without a second thought. Except today, he's coming to me, and he's got no idea what's waiting. I push through the front doors, the air cool and crisp inside, and the receptionist, Emma, a no-nonsense woman with a tight bun, looks up from her desk. "Morning, Mr. Mercer," she says, her voice smooth, professional. I nod back, "Morning," and keep walking. My name's etched in brass behind her, Cole Mercer, CEO, but most folks who come through here don't connect it to the guy in the coffee shop apron. That's how I've kept it until now. I'm barely settled in my office, big windows, dark wood desk, a view of Charleston waking up, when Emma buzzes me. "Mr. Sinclair's here," she says through the intercom. "Send him in," I reply, leaning back in my chair. The door swings open a minute later, and there he is. Gregory Sinclair, storming in like he owns the place, his face red, his tie a little crooked. He's got that look, anger mixed with panic, and it's almost funny how fast the king's crown's slipping. "I need to speak to your director," he growls, not even glancing at me yet, his eyes darting around like he's expecting someone else. Emma's voice cuts in from behind him, calm as ever. "You have an appointment with Mr. Mercer." Gregory freezes, his head snapping toward her. "Mercer," he says, like the name's a bad taste. "Yes," she replies, unfazed. Mr. Cole Mercer, our CEO. She shuts the door as she leaves, and the silence lands hard. He turns to me then, slow, like he's moving through mud, and I see it. The moment his world tilts. His face goes pale, sour milk white, and his mouth opens but nothing comes out. I stand up, casual, and walk around the desk, the loan papers in my hand. Coffee guy, he whispers, his voice cracking like thin ice. I stop, meet his eyes, and set the papers down on the glass table between us. Owner, I say, my voice steady, calm. And this coffee guy just denied your emergency loan. I tap the stack, the red denied stamp glaring up at him, and watch his jaw tighten. He doesn't move, doesn't speak, just stares at me like I'm a ghost who stepped out of the walls. I've waited years for this, years of his jabs, his smirks, his cappuccino cracks, and now here we are, the barista and the tycoon, and I'm the one holding the keys. Cole, he finally says, his tone shifting, softer now, like he's testing the water. You don't understand what this means. I tilt my head, lean against the desk, and cross my arms. I understand plenty, I tell him. I understand your Midtown project's a house of cards. I understand you've been scrambling for cash because your investors are pulling out. And I understand my bank's the only thing standing between you and a very public fall. His eyes narrow, but there's fear there, flickering behind the bluster. You can't do this, he says, stepping closer. Your family. I laugh quiet, sharp, and it stops him cold. Family. I echo. Family doesn't roast me in front of a room full of strangers. Family doesn't treat me like a stray dog Bianca dragged in. You've never seen me, Gregory. Not once. And now you're paying for it. He blinks, and I see the shift. He's not used to being on this side of the table. What do you want? He asks, his voice low, desperate. An apology? Money? Name it. I shake my head, slow, deliberate. I don't want anything from you, I say. I've got everything I need right here. I gesture at the office, the papers, the life I built while he was busy laughing. This isn't about revenge. It's about respect. And you've got none to give. He stares at the denied loan docs, his hands flexing like he wants to grab them, tear them up, make it all go away. But he can't. You're ruining me, he says, almost a whisper. No, I correct him. You did that yourself. I just stopped bailing you out. I walk back to my chair, sit down, and let the silence stretch. He's still standing there, a man who spent his life towering over everyone, and now he's shrinking before my eyes. You've got 24 hours to figure out another lifeline, I tell him, picking up a pen like it's just another day. Eastbridge is done with you. He doesn't move at first, just stares, then turns and walks out, his steps heavy, defeated. The door clicks shut, and I lean back, the weight of it all settling in. I'm not invisible anymore, not to him, not to anyone who's paying attention. The mask's off, and it feels good, like a breath I've been holding too long. I glance at the papers, the red stamp glowing, and think about the gala, the toast, the laughter. They won't laugh now. Not when they see who's really running the show. I'm sitting in my office at Eastbridge Capital, the afternoon sun cutting sharp lines across the desk, when Gregory comes back. I'm Cole Mercer, and yesterday I flipped his world upside down, denied his emergency loan, watched him stumble out of here like a man who'd lost his shadow. Now he's back, standing in my doorway, and he's not the same guy who stormed him before. His tie's still crooked, his hair's a little wild, and there's a desperation in his eyes I've never seen. He doesn't wait for an invite, just steps in, shuts the door, and starts talking. Cole, he says, his voice rough, like he hasn't slept. You don't know what you're doing. This will destroy my company. I lean back in my chair, fingers steepled, and let him go. He's pacing now, hands waving, throwing out numbers, projected profits, investor names, timelines, like they'll change my mind. I don't flinch, don't interrupt, just watch him unravel. He stops, plants his hands on the table, and looks at me, really looks at me, for maybe the first time since I married Bianca. I've built this from nothing, he says, his voice cracking. 40 years, Cole? 40 years of sweat and deals and sleepless nights. You can't just pull the rug out like this. I nod, slow, like I'm thinking it over, but I've already seen the files. Eastbridge's analyst tore through his books last night. Every transaction, every loan, every shady move he's made to keep his empire afloat. Maybe you should have been more careful, I say, my tone even, calm. More careful with your public insults. And your books. I slide a folder across the table, red flags marked in bright ink, phantom assets, debt shuffled around like a shell game. That's not oversight, Gregory. That's fraud. His face goes slack, like I've punched the air out of him. He grabs the folder, flips it open, and scans the pages he knows are true because he cooked them himself. "Where'd you get this?" he mutters, but it's not a real question. He knows. "My people are good at their jobs," I tell him. "Better than yours, apparently." He drops the folder, sinks into the chair across from me, and runs a hand over his face. "You've got no idea what this'll do," he says, quieter now, almost pleading. "The jobs, the families, hundreds of people depend on me." I lean forward, elbows on the desk, and meet his gaze. "Then you should have thought about them before you started laundering debt," I say. "Before you stood up at that gala and made me the joke of the night." He flinches, and I see it, the memory of that toast hitting him like a brick. "Some of us build empires," he'd said, smirking while they laughed. Now he's not laughing. "Cole," he tries again, softer. "I didn't mean it like that. It was just talk. I cut him off. "It was you," I say, sharp. "That's who you are. You've spent years treating me like dirt, and I let you. I stood there, smiled, poured your damn coffee, and you never once wondered who I was. Well, now you know." He stares at me, his mouth working like he's got something else to say, but nothing comes. "If I go down," he starts, then trails off. I finish it for him. "You already did. The moment you opened your mouth last night." I push back from the desk, stand up, and walk to the window. The city's buzzing below, cars, people, life moving on, and I feel the shift inside me. This isn't just about the loan anymore. It's about all of it. The years I've swallowed his crap, the way he's looked through me like I'm nothing. I turn back, and he's still sitting there, deflated, a king without a throne. "You've got options," I say, though I know he doesn't, not really. "Sell what you can, call in favors, find another bank dumb enough to touch you." "But Eastbridge?" "We're out." He doesn't move, just stares at the floor, and I wonder if he's finally seeing it, the hole he's dug, the one I'm not climbing in to pull him out of. I could have signed that loan. Could have kept his tower standing, let him keep his crown. But why? So he could roast me again next year? So he could keep pretending I'm less than him? No. I've got my own empire, built quiet and strong, and I don't need his approval to sleep at night. "You've got till the end of the week," I tell him, walking back to my chair. "After that, the creditors will come knocking. Good luck." He looks up at me then, and there's something raw in his eyes, fear, maybe regret, but it's too late for that. He stands, slow, like his bones ache, and heads for the door. "This isn't over," he mutters, "but it's weak, a last gasp." "Yeah, it is," I say, and he's gone. I sit back down, the folder still open on the table, and let out a long breath. The empire's cracking his, not mine, and I'm the one who swung the hammer. It feels heavy, but right. I've been invisible too long, and now the pieces are falling where they belong. Gregory's not the only one who'll feel this. Bianca's next, and the family, and the world outside these walls. But for now, it's just me and the quiet, and I'm okay with that. I'm home when it all comes crashing down, sitting in the kitchen with a beer I haven't touched, the bottle sweating on the counter. I'm Cole Mercer, and today's been a hell of a ride. Denying Gregory's loan, watching his empire teeter, feeling the weight of my own power settle in. The house is quiet, too quiet, until the front door slams open and Bianca storms in. She's a whirlwind, hair loose, eyes wild, her heels clicking sharp against the hardwood. She knows. I can tell before she even opens her mouth. She drops her bag on the floor, stares at me like I'm a stranger, and says, "You did this." Her voice is tight, shaking, and I don't play dumb. "Yeah," I say, calm, meeting her gaze. "I did." She paces, hands flying to her hips, then her hair, then back again. "My father called me," she says, her words spilling fast. "He's a mess, Cole. A mess. He said you own some bank, that you killed his loan, that you're tearing everything apart. Is that true?" I nod, slow, and take a sip of the beer just to steady myself. "It's true," I tell her. "Eastbridge Capital's mine. Has been for years. I denied his loan because he's been cooking his books, Bianca. Fraud. The kind that doesn't just hurt him. It hurts everyone tied to him." She stops pacing, stares at me, and her mouth drops open. "Years?" she whispers. "You've had this whole thing, and you never told me?" Her voice cracks, and I see the hurt there, sharp and real. I stand up, move around the counter, but keep my distance. "I built it," I say, keeping it simple. "Started with a startup I sold, turned it into something bigger, banks, real estate, investments. I kept it quiet because I didn't need the noise. Didn't need your dad, or anyone else telling me who I should be. She shakes her head, fast, like she's trying to shake my words out. You lied to me, she says louder now. All this time, I thought you were just the coffee shop guy. My husband, the sweet, simple guy who married me. And you're what, a billionaire? Some secret king. I wince at that, but don't back down. I didn't lie, I say. I just didn't tell you everything. You never asked, Bianca. None of you did. You all saw what you wanted. Me in an apron, pouring drinks, staying small so you could feel big. Her eyes flash, and she steps closer, jabbing a finger at me. Don't you dare put this on me, she snaps. You hid this. You let me think. God. Cole, you let my father treat you like trash, and you just smiled. Why? Why didn't you say something? I take a breath, feel the old anger stir, and let it out slow. Because I didn't need his respect, I tell her. Or yours, back then. I built what I built for me, not to prove anything to him. But yeah, I let him talk. I let him laugh. And you know what? I'm done with that now. Done being the stray dog your family kicks around. She freezes, her hand dropping, and I see the tears welling up. You think that's what I saw you as? She asks, her voice softer, breaking. A stray. I shrug. Not harsh, just honest. That's how it felt, I say. Every dinner, every party, every time he called me coffee boy, and you didn't say a word. I was invisible, Bianca. To all of you. She wipes her eyes, quick, like she's mad at herself for crying. I didn't know, she says. I didn't know you were this. She gestures at nothing, everything, the life I've kept under wraps. How could I? You never let me in. I step closer now, close enough to see the way her shoulders shake. I didn't let anyone in, I admit. Not because I didn't trust you. Because I liked the quiet. Liked being the guy nobody expected anything from. But that's over. Your dad's crashing, and I'm the one who pushed him. That's who I am now, whether you like it or not. She looks at me, long and hard, and I can see her torn loyalty to her father, the man who raised her, warring with the reality of me, the husband she thought she knew. What am I supposed to do with this? She asks, almost to herself. He's my family, Cole. And you're breaking him. I don't make her choose, not yet. I'm not asking you to pick sides, I say, my voice steady. But I'm not invisible anymore, Bianca. I've got power, I've got a name, and I'm not hiding it to keep him comfortable. If that's too much for you, if you can't handle me being more than the coffee guy, you're free to walk. Her breath catches, and she stares at me like I've slapped her. Walk, she echoes. You'd let me go, just like that? I nod slow. If that's what you need, I say. But if you stay, it's with the real me. No more pretending. She doesn't answer, just turns and grabs her bag, her heels clicking as she heads for the stairs. I don't stop her, don't call out. The door upstairs shuts, and I'm alone again, the beer still cold in my hand. I sit back down, take a long drink, and feel the quiet settle. She's shaken, I get that. Her whole world's tilting, and I'm the one who rocked it. But I meant what I said. No more masks, no more swallowing their crap. If she can't handle it, that's her call. For now, I've got my own mess to sort, Gregory's fallout, the business, the life I've been building. The family's cracking, and I'm at the center of it. But I'm not backing down. Not anymore. I'm standing in my office at Eastbridge Capital, staring out the window as the city hums below when the news breaks. I'm Cole Mercer, and the past few days have been a storm, denying Gregory's loan, facing Bianca's anger, watching the cracks spread through the Sinclair family. Now it's gone public, and there's no hiding anymore. My phone buzzes on the desk, a dozen notifications piling up, but I don't need to check them to know what's happening. I turn on the TV mounted in the corner, and there it is, splashed across the financial news. Sinclair empire implodes after secret bank CEO shuts off Lifeline. The anchor's voice is crisp, excited, like she's reading a thriller. Sources confirm Cole Mercer, CEO of Eastbridge Capital. And, yes, the unassuming coffee shop owner married to Bianca Sinclair Mercer, denied an emergency loan critical to Gregory Sinclair's Midtown project. The fallout? A domino effect threatening to topple one of Charleston's oldest real estate dynasties. I mute it, let the images roll, stock footage of Gregory's buildings, a shot of me pouring coffee at Bean and Ground, pulled from some old local feature. It's surreal, seeing my two worlds smashed together like this. The phone buzzes again, and this time I pick it up. It's Tara, my assistant, her voice steady but quick. It's everywhere, Cole, she says. CNN, Bloomberg, even the local stations. Gregory's spinning it. gave a statement calling you ungrateful, says he gave you a chance by letting you into the family. I laugh, short and dry. A chance, I say. He gave me nothing but a target on my back. Tara's quiet for a second, then Layla Cross just posted online too. Resigned publicly. She's backing you up, says Gregory's arrogance did him in. I nod, even though she can't see me. Good, I say. Let it burn. I hang up and pull up Layla's post on my laptop. It's short, sharp, and brutal. I worked for Gregory Sinclair for 5 years. I watched him laugh at a man who held his survival in one signature, Cole Mercer. That gala toast was his last mistake. I'm out. The comments are exploding, some calling her a traitor, others cheering her on, most just stunned. I lean back in my chair, the weight of it sinking in. This isn't just about me and Gregory anymore. It's a reckoning, loud and public, and I'm the guy who lit the match. Gregory's out there, flailing, trying to paint me as the bad guy, but it's not sticking. Not with Layla's words out there, not with the truth seeping through the cracks he can't plug. I head downstairs, needing air, and step into the lobby just as a reporter spots me through the glass doors. She's young, eager, shoving a mic my way the second I'm outside. Mr. Mercer, she calls. Any comment on the Sinclair collapse? On your role in it. I stop, look at her, and keep it simple. Gregory made his choices, I say. I made mine. That's all. I push past before she can follow up, heading for my truck. The streets buzzing, people glancing my way, whispering, phones out like I'm some kind of celebrity. I've spent years blending in, and now I'm the guy they can't stop staring at. It's strange, but I don't hate it, not yet. Back at home, the TV's still on when I walk in, Bianca nowhere in sight. She's been distant since our fight, sleeping in the guest room, avoiding me like I'm a bomb she doesn't know how to defuse. I don't blame her. This is a lot, and she's caught in the middle. The news cycles Gregory's statement again, his voice clipped and bitter. I welcomed Cole into my family, gave him a chance, and this is how he repays me. I turn it off, sick of his lies. He didn't give me anything. I took it, built it, earned it while he was busy laughing. The phone rings. Local number, probably another reporter, and I let it go to voicemail. I'm done talking for now. The world's got enough to chew on. Later, I drive to the coffee shop, needing something normal. The regulars are there, sipping their drinks, but they're looking at me different, curious, maybe impressed. Old man Joe, who's been coming in forever, sets his paper down and grins. Heard you're a big shot now, Cole, he says. I shrug, pour him a refill. Just a guy with a coffee pot, I say, and he chuckles. But it's not the same, and I know it. The mask's off, and the reckoning's here. Gregory's empire's crumbling, creditors circling, projects stalling, and I'm the name on everyone's lips. I could have stayed quiet, kept the loan flowing, let him keep his throne. But I didn't. I stepped up, and now the world knows who I am. I lock up late, the shop dark and still, and sit at the counter with a cold cup I don't drink. Layla's post keeps running through my head. He laughed at a man who held his survival in one signature. That's it, right there. Gregory thought he was untouchable, thought I was nothing. Now he's scrambling, and I'm standing tall. The public's watching, judging, picking sides, but I don't care what they think. This was never about them. It was about me, about respect, about taking back what I let him steal every time he opened his mouth. I head home, the city lights blurring past, and feel the shift. The barista's gone. The king's here. And I'm not stepping back into the shadows. I'm sitting at my desk at Eastbridge Capital, the morning light slanting through the windows, when Tara walks in with a stack of papers and a grin. I'm Cole Mercer, and the past week's been a whirlwind, Gregory's empire crashing, the news blowing up, my name everywhere. Now it's time to move forward. Auction results, Tara says, dropping the stack in front of me. Sinclair's properties, Midtown, the waterfront lots, a couple downtown buildings, all ours. Dirt cheap, too. I lean back, take the top sheet, and scan the numbers. He's right, they're steals, picked up from the wreckage of Gregory's collapse. Creditors swooped in fast, and Eastbridge was ready. Good. Let's get moving on the rebrand. She nods, already on it, and I feel the shift. This isn't just cleanup, it's creation. I've been planning this for a while, something new, something mine. Cole Groundworks, a passion project I've kept in my head until now. The idea is simple. Take those properties and turn them into something real. Affordable housing, community spaces, places people can live and breathe, not just towers for rich folks to gawk at. Gregory built for ego. I'm building for life. I spend the morning sketching it out. Low-rise apartments with green roofs, a community center with a daycare, maybe a park where kids can run. Tara's on the phone with architects, developers, people who get it. By noon, we've got a plan rolling, and it feels good, better than watching Gregory fall, better than proving a point. This is what I've wanted. Power that does something, not just takes. I don't hide anymore. The coffee shop's still mine. I'm there the next day, pouring espresso, wiping counters, but it's different now. People know who I am. Regulars like Joe grin wider, strangers linger, asking questions. Heard you're some kind of tycoon, a guy in a ball cap says, sipping his black coffee. I shrug, smile. Just a guy who got lucky, I tell him, but they don't buy it. The apron's still on, but the mask's off, and I'm okay with that. Then the call comes, Forbes Local Legends, a magazine I've flipped through at the shop. We want your story, the editor says, her voice bright. From barista to billionaire. People are eating it up. I hesitate, then say yes. Why not? I've spent years in the shadows. Might as well step into the light. The interview's quick, over the phone, and I keep it honest. I tell her about the startup I sold, the quiet years building Eastbridge, the coffee shop as my cover. Why do you stay quiet so long? She asks. I pause, think about Gregory's smirks, the gala toast, the way they all saw me. I didn't need them to know. I say. Not until it mattered. She digs into the Sinclair fallout, how I denied the loan, how it sparked the collapse. Some call it revenge, she says. Was it? I shake my head, even though she can't see. Not revenge, I tell her. Respect. They didn't give it, so I took it. The piece drops a few days later, and there I am on the cover, from barista to billionaire. The man who taught respect the hard way. It's me at the shop, apron on, smiling soft, with a skyline behind me. Bianca leaves a copy on the counter at home. No note, just there. She's still distant, moving through the house like a ghost since our fight. I don't push, let her figure it out. The world's loud now, but I'm settling into quiet again, a different kind. I drive to one of the auction sites that afternoon, a rundown lot Gregory once bragged about. It's empty, weeds poking through cracked concrete, but I see it. Apartments, families, life. I walk the perimeter, boots crunching, and feel the weight lift. This is mine, not his. I'm not the coffee guy anymore, not the invisible son-in-law. I'm the one building something new, and they can't laugh that away. The shop's busy later, a line out the door, and I'm in the thick of it, steaming milk, pulling shots, joking with customers. A kid asks for my autograph, holding up the Forbes cover, and I laugh, sign it with a marker from the drawer. You're famous, he says, grinning. Maybe, I tell him, sliding his hot chocolate across. We're just lucky. But it's more than luck. It's years of work, of watching, of waiting for the right moment. Gregory's gone quiet. Creditors took what was left. His name's mud. But I don't gloat. I don't need to. The reckoning's done, and I'm still standing. Night falls, and I lock up, the shop dark and still. I sit at the counter, the magazine open in front of me, and read the headline again. Billionaire. It's real now, not just numbers in an account. I've got power, a voice, a chance to do something good. Coldgroundworks is just the start, more projects, more change. I'm not loud about it. Don't need to be. The world's watching, but I'm still me, quiet, steady, the guy who knows how to wait. I flip off the lights, head home, and feel the calm settle. They laughed once. Now they see. And I'm just getting started. It's a cool evening when I'm at Bean and Ground, the shop winding down after a busy day. I'm Cole Mercer, and the last few months have been a ride. Gregory's collapse, the public fallout, building Coldgroundworks from the ashes. Now I'm here, behind the counter, pouring a cappuccino for an old man who's got his nose in a book. The foam swirls just right, and I slide it across with a nod. He mumbles a thanks, doesn't look up, and I smile to myself. This place still feels like home, even with everything else spinning around me. The door chimes, and I glance up. Bianca's standing there. No entourage, no flash, just her in a simple coat and jeans. Her eyes are soft, a little red, and she's holding herself like she's not sure she's welcome. I wipe my hands on a towel, keep my face steady, and wait. She steps closer, stops at the counter, and looks at me, really looks, like she's seeing me for the first time in weeks. You were never small, she says, her voice low, almost breaking. They just needed me to be, I reply, keeping it simple, honest. She nods, slow, and I see the tears glisten, but she blinks them back. I'm sorry, she says, and it's real sincere, not forced. For not seeing you. For letting them. For everything. I don't say anything right away, just lean against the counter and let her words hang there. It's been tense since our fight, her pulling away, me giving her space. But this feels different, like she's finally catching up to who I am. I grab a mug, start pouring her a coffee, her usual, black with a hint of cinnamon, and slide it over. No bitterness left, I say, tapping the rim. Just a full-bodied finish. She laughs, soft, and it's the first time I've heard that sound in too long. She takes the mug, wraps her hands around it, and sits on a stool. I read the Forbes piece, she says, sipping slow. It's good. True. I nod, grab a rag, and start wiping down the espresso machine, just to keep my hands busy. It's me, I tell her. All of it. She sets the mug down, looks at me again. I didn't know what to do, Cole. With Dad falling apart, with you being this. I was mad, scared. But I get it now. You didn't owe us anything. I stop wiping, lean on the counter across from her. I didn't do it to hurt you, I say. Or him, even. It was about me, about not being the guy they walked over anymore. She nods, her fingers tracing the mug's edge. He's gone quiet, she says. Sold the house, moved somewhere smaller. He's not fighting anymore. I don't say anything to that, just let it sit. Gregory's done, and I don't need to kick him while he's down. And us? I ask, keeping my voice even. She looks up, holds my gaze. I don't want to walk, she says. I want to try. With you, all of you, not just the coffee guy. It's not a promise, not a fix, but it's something. I nod, slow, and pour myself a coffee too. We sit there, the shop empty now except for the old man in the corner, and it's quiet, comfortable, like it used to be before everything blew up. I'm still me, I tell her. The shop, the coffee, it's not a lie. Just not the whole story. She smiles, faint but real. I like that story, she says. And the rest of it too. I don't push for more, don't need to. She's here, and that's enough for now. I finish my coffee, glance out the window at the city moving slow beyond the glass. It's strange how it all turned out. I spent years invisible, letting them laugh, building something they couldn't see. Now the world knows, Gregory's down, I'm up, and the pieces have settled. I think about the gala, that toast, the way they roared while I stood there with a smile. They don't laugh now. They can't. I've got Eastbridge, Coal Groundworks, a name that means something. But this shop, this little corner, it's still where I feel right. I lock up after Bianca leaves, promising to talk more at home, and stand outside, the night air cool on my face. I think about justice, how it brews quiet, slow, until it's ready. Gregory thought he held the power, thought I was nothing. But I watched, waited, built my own. Now he's the one fading, and I'm the one standing. It's not loud, not flashy, I don't need it to be. The old man's gone, the shop's dark, and I head to the truck, the keys jangling in my hand. Bianca's waiting, the projects are rolling, and I've got no regrets. Sometimes the world's loudest people overlook the quietest power, I think, climbing in. That's where I won, where I'll keep winning. The engine starts, and I drive home, the city lights fading behind me, the final cup poured. At dinner, my wife's sister sneered. How does it feel being the most useless one here? My wife and everyone laughed except me. I just smiled and said, how does it feel knowing this, useless one, won't be paying your bills anymore? The moment those words left my mouth. You know that feeling when you're sitting in a room full of people who think they know you, but they don't have a clue? That's exactly where I found myself last Saturday evening, squeezed into one of those uncomfortable antique chairs that Tessa's mom, Patricia, insisted on keeping around her dining room table. The whole setup screamed old Charleston money, the kind that whispers instead of shouts, but makes damn sure everyone knows it's there. The weekend gathering was Patricia's thing. Every month, like clockwork, she'd summon the family for what she called reconnecting over a proper meal. Translation: let's all get together so I can remind everyone how much better my side of the family is than wherever the hell you came from. I'd been showing up to these things for 8 years now, ever since Tessa and I got married, and honestly, I should have seen this coming a mile away. There I was, cutting into some overpriced piece of beef that probably cost more than most people's grocery budget for the week, listening to the usual soundtrack of this family's greatest hits. Patricia was going on about some charity gala she was organizing, dropping names like breadcrumbs for anyone desperate enough to follow her social climbing trail. Tessa's dad, Everett, was nursing his third bourbon and nodding along like everything his wife said was pure genius. And Graham, Tessa's younger brother, was doing that thing he always does, trying to sound important while talking about absolutely nothing. But it was Bree who really set the stage for what was about to go down. Tessa's older sister had this way of making every conversation about her, and tonight was no different. She was perched there in her designer dress, the one that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, swirling her wine around like she was some kind of sommelier instead of a failed entrepreneur who couldn't keep a business afloat to save her life. "You know," Bree said, and I could already tell by that tone that whatever was coming next wasn't going to be good. I was telling my friend Sarah about our family dinner traditions, and she was just amazed by how diverse our little group is. Diverse. Right. Code for, look at the charity case we let sit at our table. I kept eating, kept my mouth shut, because that's what I'd learned to do over the years. Don't rock the boat. Don't make waves. Just smile and nod and let them have their little superiority complex. Because at the end of the day, family harmony was more important than my ego. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. Tessa was laughing at something Ken had said, Bree's husband, who worked in real estate and never missed an opportunity to remind everyone about his latest big sale. The guy was basically a walking LinkedIn post, but he fit right in with this crowd. All flash, all surface, all about looking good instead of actually being good. That's when Bree decided to really go for it. She set down her wine glass with that little deliberate clink that meant she was about to say something she thought was incredibly clever, and she looked right at me with this smirk that I'd seen 1,000 times before. "So, Miles," she said, and the whole table went quiet because everyone could sense what was coming. "How does it feel being the most useless one here?" The words hung in the air like smoke from a cigarette. For a second, nobody moved. Even the grandfather clock in the corner seemed to stop ticking. Then, like someone had pressed play on a movie that had been paused, the laughter started. First Tessa, with this high-pitched giggle that I'd heard her use when she was nervous but trying to fit in. Then Patricia, covering her mouth with her napkin like that made the laughter more polite. Everett let out this deep chuckle, the kind that said he agreed but was trying to be subtle about it. Graham snorted into his beer. Even Ken, who owed me 15 grand from when his real estate deals went south 2 years ago, was laughing like Bree had just delivered the punchline of the century. But here's the thing about moments like that. Time slows down, and you get this crystal clear view of exactly where you stand with people. You see their true faces, stripped of all the polite bullshit and family obligation nonsense. And what I saw around that table was 8 years of barely concealed contempt finally getting its moment in the spotlight. I should have been angry. Hell, I should have been furious. But instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Absolute clarity. It was like someone had just handed me the keys to a door I'd been standing in front of for years, too scared or too stupid to try to handle. So I smiled. Not one of those fake, everything's fine smiles that I'd been wearing to these dinners for nearly a decade. This was different. This was the smile of a man who'd just realized he'd been playing a game where the other players had been cheating the whole time. I set down my fork, dabbed my mouth with the napkin, using those perfect table manners that Patricia had insisted I learn, and looked right back at Bree with that same calm expression I'd perfected over years of swallowing my pride. "How does it feel?" I said, my voice steady and clear enough that everyone could hear every single word. "Knowing this useless one won't be paying your bills anymore." The laughter died faster than a smartphone battery on a cold day. Bree's wine glass froze halfway to her lips, and I could literally see the color draining from her face. The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a pin drop on that expensive Persian rug. That was the moment everything changed. Not just for that evening, but for everything that came after. Because sometimes, when someone hands you the perfect opportunity to tell the truth, you take it. And sometimes, when you finally stop being useful to people who think you're useless, you discover who you really are. The grenade had been pulled, and there was no putting the pin back in. Here's what kills me about people like Bree and her whole crew. They see what they want to see, and everything else might as well be invisible. To them, I was just this guy who worked from home in his pajamas, probably playing video games all day while their precious Tessa brought home the real money. They had it all figured out in their heads. I was the deadbeat husband who got lucky enough to marry up into their perfect little Charleston dynasty. If only they knew what I actually did for a living. See, while they were out there networking at country clubs and dropping names at charity galas, I was quietly building something they couldn't even wrap their heads around. Grant Consultancy doesn't sound sexy, I'll give you that. When people ask what I do, their eyes usually glaze over before I finish explaining. But here's the thing about grants. There's serious money in them if you know what you're doing, and I've been in this game long enough to know exactly what I'm doing. I started my consultancy, Meridian Grant Solutions, about 10 years ago, right after I got tired of watching nonprofits and small businesses struggle to navigate the bureaucratic nightmare that is federal and state funding. Turns out, I had a knack for translating their real-world needs into the kind of academic jargon that grant committees eat up. More than that, I understood the system, who was funding what, when the money was flowing, and how to position a proposal so it landed on the right desk at exactly the right time. My home office might not look like much to someone expecting corner offices and glass towers, but from that little room overlooking our back garden, I've pulled in more money than most of these people see in their flashiest years. We're talking 6 figures annually, sometimes pushing 7 when I land those big federal contracts. But since I work in shorts and a t-shirt, since I don't drive a BMW or wear a Rolex, since I actually prefer staying home to hitting up networking events, they all just assumed I was some kind of charity case. And Tessa? She was more than happy to let them think whatever they wanted to think. The first time I bailed out Breeze Yoga Studio was back in 2019. She'd blown through her startup capital in about 6 months. Turns out organic kombucha and crystal healing workshops don't pay the bills quite like she thought they would. She was 3 weeks behind on rent, had creditors calling every day, and was about 2 seconds away from having to shut down the whole operation. I remember the call. Tessa came into my office, tears streaming down her face, begging me to help her sister. She's worked so hard for this, Miles. This studio is her dream. So I did what I always did. I wrote the check. 15 grand to cover back rent and get her current. Another 10 to help with inventory and marketing. $25,000, just like that, because family comes first, right? Did Bree ever thank me directly? Hell no. She thanked Tessa, sent her flowers, posted on social media about how grateful she was for her amazing support system. But when she looked at me at family dinners after that, it was like I was just another piece of furniture. Then there was Graham's DUI situation. Kid got pulled over coming back from some bachelor party in Savannah, blew a .12, and suddenly he's looking at jail time, license suspension, and lawyer fees that would have buried him. His teaching salary wasn't going to cover it, and his parents sure as hell weren't about to tap into their retirement fund for his mistakes. So guess who got the tearful phone call? Guess who ended up covering 12 grand in legal fees, fines, and court costs? And guess who never got so much as a handwritten thank you note? But the real kicker was Tessa's parents and their property tax situation. 3 different times over the years, Everett's investments went sideways, and they found themselves scrambling to cover their annual property tax bill on that big house of theirs. You know, the one they used to host these monthly dinners where they looked down on everyone else. Yeah, that house. Each time, it was the same song and dance. Patricia would call Tessa, sobbing about how embarrassing it would be if they lost the family home, how they'd never live down the shame in their social circle. Tessa would come to me with those big eyes, asking if there was any way we could help just this once. And like an idiot, I'd transfer the money. 8 grand the first time, 12 the second, 15 the third. The really twisted part? They never asked where the money was coming from. Not once. They just assumed their golden daughter had it handled, maybe through some trust fund they'd forgotten about or investment account they didn't know she had. It was easier for them to believe in magic money than to acknowledge that the guy they treated like an unemployed loser was actually keeping their whole family afloat. I kept records of everything. Every transfer, every check, every time I stepped in to save someone's ass while they were busy pretending I didn't exist. Digital records, paper receipts, email chains, bank statements. The whole paper trail sitting right there in my filing cabinet, organized by year and family member. Not because I was planning some big revenge scheme. Hell, I wasn't even thinking about it most of the time. I kept records because that's what you do when you're running a business, when you're responsible with money, when you understand that every dollar going out needs to be accounted for. It's called being an adult. But sitting there at that dinner table, watching them laugh at Bree's little joke, something clicked. 8 years of being treated like dead weight by people who'd been living off my generosity without even realizing it. 8 years of being dismissed and disrespected while I quietly kept their whole world from falling apart. Bree thought she was making a joke about the most useless person at the table. What she didn't realize was that she'd just lit the fuse on 8 years of documented proof that I was actually the most essential person in that room. And now? Now it was time for them to find out what useful really meant. I wasn't always the invisible man at the dinner table. Hell, there was a time when I had dreams that would have knocked these people's socks off, ambitions that made their little Charleston society games look like kindergarten playground politics. But somewhere along the way, I traded those dreams for something I thought was more important: fitting in with a family that never wanted me to fit in at all. Growing up in rural Georgia, about 2 hours outside of Atlanta, I was the kid who always had big plans. My dad, Robert Granger, worked construction his whole life. Honest work that left him with calloused hands and a straight back even when arthritis started setting in. He wasn't much for fancy words or philosophical discussions, but he had this way of dropping wisdom that stuck with you whether you wanted it to or not. "Son," he'd tell me while we worked on his old Ford pickup in our driveway, "there are two kinds of men in this world. The ones who spend their time telling everyone how great they are, and the ones who spend their time actually being great. Guess which ones end up happier?" I learned early that actions mattered more than words, that building something real was worth more than talking about building something someday. While my classmates were bragging about what cars they'd drive or what colleges they'd attend, I was actually working, summers at the hardware store, weekends helping Dad with side jobs, learning that money earned through sweat meant something different than money that just showed up in your bank account. When I got to Georgia Tech on a partial academic scholarship, I thought I had the world figured out. I was going to be an engineer, design bridges or skyscrapers, leave my mark on the skyline of some major city. I had notebooks full of sketches, ideas for structures that could change how people moved through urban spaces. My professors said I had real talent, the kind of spatial thinking that couldn't be taught. But then I met Tessa during my junior year. She was everything I wasn't: polished, connected, comfortable in social situations that made me want to crawl under a rock. She was majoring in art history, which seemed like the most luxurious thing in the world to a kid who'd worked for every textbook he'd ever owned. When she talked about spending summers in Europe, visiting museums and galleries, it was like listening to stories from another planet. I fell hard, harder than I'd ever fallen for anything in my life. And when she brought me home to meet her family that first Christmas break, I knew I was walking into a different league entirely. The house alone was enough to make my head spin. One of those historic Charleston mansions with more square footage than my entire neighborhood back home. Her family had the kind of casual wealth that didn't need to announce itself, the kind that just assumed everyone around them understood the rules of their particular game. I tried to be myself at first, talked about my engineering projects, my plans for after graduation, the construction work I'd done with my dad. But I could see it in their eyes, that polite confusion people get when they're trying to figure out how to respond to something they don't consider important. Everett would nod and say, "That's nice," in the same tone you'd use with a 5-year-old who'd just shown you a crayon drawing. Slowly, without really noticing it happening, I started changing. Started downplaying the engineering dreams, started focusing more on what they wanted to hear. Tessa would introduce me to her friends as my boyfriend who's really practical and down to earth, which was code for he's not like us, but he's useful. After we got married, the transformation was complete. They'd found their designated fixer, the guy who could handle the dirty work of actually solving problems while they focused on the important business of looking good and feeling superior. Need someone to research contractors for the kitchen renovation? Call Miles. Having trouble with the insurance company after the fender bender? Miles will handle it. Tax situation getting complicated? Miles knows about that stuff. I became their personal Google, their human Wikipedia, their go-to guy for anything that required actual work instead of just connections and charm. And the crazy part? I was good at it. Really good. I had this knack for cutting through bureaucratic nonsense, for finding solutions that other people missed, for making complicated problems simple. That's how I ended up in grant consulting in the first place. After college, I took a job with a nonprofit in Charleston, helping them navigate federal funding applications. I was making decent money, but nothing spectacular. Then I realized I could do the same work as an independent consultant and make 3 times as much. My father always said, strong men don't boast. They build. So I built. I built a business, built a reputation, built a life that could support not just me and Tessa, but apparently her entire extended family. I built it quietly, without fanfare, without asking for recognition. But I also built something else without realizing it. A prison made of other people's expectations. They called themselves achievers, these people. Bree with her failed business ventures that I kept funding. Graham with his teaching job that barely covered his car payment. Tessa's parents with their social climbing and their house that they couldn't actually afford to maintain. They measured success by how things looked from the outside, by what kind of car you drove, and which country club accepted your membership application. Meanwhile, I was actually achieving things. Building wealth, solving problems, creating value. But because I wasn't flashy about it, because I didn't wear my success like a damn peacock, they assumed I wasn't successful at all. My father had been right about strong men building instead of boasting. But he'd left out one crucial piece of advice. Strong men also know when to walk away from people who mistake their strength for weakness. And sitting at that dinner table, listening to them laugh at their own cruelty, I realized I'd been wearing a mask for so long that I'd almost forgotten what my real face looked like underneath. But Bree's little joke had just ripped that mask clean off. Monday morning hit different after that dinner. I woke up at my usual time, 6:30 a.m. sharp. But instead of feeling that familiar weight of obligation pressing down on my chest, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, complete freedom. It was like someone had cut invisible chains I'd been dragging around for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to move without them. Tessa was still asleep next to me, probably dreaming about damage control for whatever fallout she was expecting from Saturday night. She had this way of compartmentalizing unpleasant situations, just pushing them into some mental box where she could deal with them later. Classic Tessa. Avoid the mess until it becomes impossible to ignore. I made my coffee. Real coffee, not that overpriced artisanal stuff her family always insisted on serving, and sat down at my computer. Time to get to work, but not the kind of work I usually did on Monday mornings. First stop, my banking app. Over the years, I'd set up automatic transfers to make everyone's life easier. $3,000 every month to cover Bree's commercial rent on that yoga studio. $1,500 for her business insurance. Another $2,000 that went into what I privately called the Family Emergency Fund, the account that somehow always got tapped whenever someone in Tessa's family had a financial crisis. Then there was the education fund I'd been contributing to for Tessa's nephew, Jackson. Kid was smart as hell, probably smarter than any of the adults in his family, and I'd been quietly setting aside money for his college expenses since he was in middle school. $500 a month, every month. Because someone needed to think about that boy's future even if his own parents were too wrapped up in their drama to plan ahead. One by one, I canceled every single automatic transfer. Click, click, click. 8 years of financial obligation disappearing with a few mouse clicks. It was surprisingly easy, like deleting spam emails or clearing your browser history. All those monthly payments that had become as routine as brushing my teeth, gone in less than 10 minutes. The immediate aftermath was silence. Beautiful, perfect silence. No phone calls, no text messages, no emergencies that required my immediate attention and financial intervention. For 3 whole days, it was like the universe had hit a pause button on the constant stream of other people's problems that somehow always became my problems. But Friday? Friday was when reality came knocking. My phone started buzzing around 10 a.m. First call was from a number I didn't recognize. Probably Bree's accountant or her landlord's office. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call, this one from Bree herself. Voicemail again. Then a text message that was basically a string of question marks and exclamation points, which pretty much summed up Bree's communication style in general. By noon, my phone was lighting up like a Christmas tree. Bree had apparently discovered that her rent payment had bounced, and she was working her way through every possible explanation except the obvious one. Maybe it was a banking error. Maybe there was some kind of technical glitch. Maybe the automatic transfer system had malfunctioned. The voicemail started getting progressively more frantic. Miles, honey, I think there might be a problem with the bank. Can you call me back? Then, Miles, this is serious. I need to talk to you right away. And finally, Miles, what the hell is going on? Call me back now. I didn't call her back. Around 2 p.m., Tessa called. I could hear the tension in her voice before she even said hello. Babe, what's going on? Bree's absolutely furious. She says her rent payment didn't go through, and apparently it's connected to one of our accounts somehow. I loved how she phrased that. One of our accounts somehow. Like she had no idea that I'd been covering her sister's business expenses for the better part of 4 years. Like she'd genuinely forgotten about all those conversations where she'd asked me to help out just this once, or cover things until Bree gets back on her feet. I canceled the transfers, I told her, keeping my voice as calm and matter-of-fact as if I was telling her I'd picked up dry cleaning. You what? I'm no longer subsidizing ungrateful people. Let her figure it out. There was this long pause where I could practically hear the gears grinding in Tessa's head. She was trying to process what I'd just said, trying to figure out if I was serious or if this was some kind of elaborate joke that she wasn't getting. Miles, you can't be serious. She's family. She's your family. I've just been your ATM. Tessa laughed. Actually laughed. Like I'd just told her the most ridiculous thing she'd ever heard. Oh my God, you're being so dramatic. Look, I get that your feelings were hurt at dinner, but this is taking it way too far. Just call the bank and fix whatever you did, okay? That laugh was everything I needed to hear. It told me exactly how seriously she was taking this whole situation, exactly how much she understood about what had been happening for the past 8 years. In her mind, this was just some temporary tantrum that I'd get over once I cooled down. A little blip in the normal order of things where Miles quietly takes care of everyone else's problems while they go about their lives pretending he doesn't exist. I'm not calling anyone, I said, and I'm not fixing anything. Bree wanted to know what it felt like being the most useless one at the table. Now she gets to find out what it feels like when the most useless one stops being useful. The line went quiet for a long moment. When Tessa spoke again, her voice had shifted from amused to worried. Miles, honey, I think you need to take a step back and think about this rationally. You're talking about cutting off my sister, my family. Do you understand what that means? Yeah, I said, watching a cardinal land on the bird feeder outside my office window. It means they're about to learn the difference between being independent and being subsidized. Should be educational. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Because canceling the monthly transfers was just the appetizer. The main course was going to be a real eye-opener for everyone involved. Especially Bree. That evening, I was sitting in my office going through client files when I heard the front door slam hard enough to rattle the windows. Tessa's heels clicked across our hardwood floors like machine gun fire, each step getting louder and more deliberate as she made her way toward my office. I didn't need to look up to know what kind of mood she was in. The sound of her footsteps told me everything I needed to know. She appeared in my doorway like a storm cloud, still wearing the black dress she'd put on for work that morning. But now it was wrinkled and her perfectly styled hair was coming undone. Her face was flushed red, the way it got when she was trying to hold back tears and anger at the same time. We need to talk, she said, but it came out more like a demand than a request. I saved the document I was working on, a grant proposal for a community health clinic in North Carolina, and swiveled my chair around to face her. Okay, let's talk. She stepped into the room and crossed her arms, taking that stance she always used when she was gearing up for a fight. I just spent 2 hours on the phone with my sister, trying to calm her down because she thinks her entire world is falling apart. She's crying, Miles. Actually crying. And it's all because of whatever childish tantrum you're having. Childish tantrum? I kept my voice level, curious where she was going with this. Yes, this whole thing with cutting off her payments. I mean, come on. So she made a joke that hurt your feelings. So what? That's not a reason to destroy her business. I had to admire the way Tessa could reframe reality when it suited her purposes. A joke that hurt my feelings. Like 8 years of being treated like hired help was just about my delicate emotions. Destroy her business? I repeated, by not paying for it anymore. You know what I mean. She depends on that money. Exactly. I stood up and walked over to my filing cabinet. She depends on money that comes from me, while treating me like I'm some kind of parasite. Do you see the problem with that equation? Tessa followed me across the room, her voice getting higher and more strained. She's your family too, Miles. We've been married for 8 years. Her problems are our problems. That's how families work. I pulled open the bottom drawer and retrieved a thick manila folder that I'd been keeping for years without really knowing why. Maybe some part of me always knew this day would come. Maybe I'm just naturally paranoid about keeping records. Either way, I was about to be very grateful for my anal retentive filing system. No, I said, turning back to face her. She's your family. I've just been your ATM. I set the folder down on my desk and opened it. Inside were printed bank statements, screenshots of transfers, email chains, receipts, and photocopies of checks. Every single financial interaction I'd had with her family over the years, organized chronologically and labeled with neat little tabs. Tessa's eyes went wide when she saw the contents of the folder. What is this? This, I said, pulling out the first document, is the receipt for $15,000 I gave Bree in September 2019 to save her yoga studio from foreclosure. And this is the email where she thanked you for the help, not me. Even though the money came from my business account. I set that document aside and picked up the next one. This is the bank statement showing the $12,000 I transferred to cover Graham's DUI legal fees in 2020. And here's the text message where he thanked you for being such an amazing sister and helping him out of a tight spot. Document after document. I laid them out on the desk like I was dealing cards. Each one telling the same story. Me solving problems, them thanking Tessa, everyone pretending the money just magically appeared whenever they needed it. And these, I said, pulling out a stack of papers that was significantly thicker than the others, are the records of every time I've bailed out your parents when their property taxes came due. 3 separate occasions, totaling $35,000. Your dad's exact words the last time were, "Thank God Tessa married into money." Into money, Tessa. Like you had some secret trust fund I didn't know about. Her mouth was opening and closing like she was trying to speak, but couldn't figure out what words to use. She picked up one of the bank statements, staring at it like it was written in a foreign language. I didn't realize. She started, then stopped. You didn't realize what? That money doesn't just appear out of thin air. That every time your family had a crisis and you came to me asking for help just this once, it was actually my money solving their problems. I thought. We're married. Our money is our money, right? Our money? I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. Tessa, you make $42,000 a year at the gallery. I made 6 figures last year alone. When exactly did your money become part of the equation? She set the bank statement down with shaking hands. You've been keeping track of all this? I keep track of everything. It's called being responsible with money. It's called knowing where every dollar goes and why. Your family might run on magical thinking and good vibes, but I live in the real world where bills actually have to be paid by real people with real money. Tessa was looking at the spread of documents like they were evidence of some crime she didn't know she'd committed. In a way, I guess they were. Miles, I had no idea you felt like this. If you just talked to me. Talk to you. I interrupted. Tessa, every single one of these situations started with you coming to me and asking for help. Every single time, you knew exactly where the money was coming from. You just never bothered to make sure anyone else knew. She was crying now, which should have made me feel guilty. A few weeks ago, it would have made me feel guilty. But right now, looking at 8 years of documented evidence that my own wife had been treating me like a silent partner in my own marriage, I just felt tired. I never meant for it to be like this, she whispered. But it was like this. For 8 years, it was exactly like this. And the worst part? You were okay with it. You were okay with letting your family think I was useless as long as I kept being useful to them. I started gathering up the documents, putting them back in the folder in the same careful order I'd kept them in. What happens now? Tessa asked. I looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in years. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with in college. But she was also someone who'd spent 8 years allowing her family to treat me like garbage while benefiting from my generosity. Now, I said, closing the folder, they get to find out what independence actually costs. But I wasn't done revealing the depth of this situation. Not even close. The silence in my office stretched out like a rubber band about to snap. Tessa was still staring at the folder of documents, probably trying to process the fact that her husband had been keeping meticulous records of every financial favor he'd done for her family. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the monthly transfers were just the tip of the iceberg. I walked over to my safe, the small fireproof one I kept behind my desk for important documents. Tessa watched me dial in the combination, her eyes red-rimmed but alert. She probably figured I was getting out more bank statements, maybe some additional receipts that would make her feel even worse about the situation. She had no idea what was coming. "You remember 2018, right?" I said, pulling out a legal-sized envelope that had been sitting in my safe for 6 years. "When Bree's yoga studio was about to go under?" "Of course I remember. That's when you helped her out with the rent money." "Not just rent money, Tessa. She was 2 weeks away from total foreclosure. The landlord had already started eviction proceedings. Her equipment suppliers were threatening to repossess everything. She owed money to everyone: the electric company, the water company, her insurance provider. We're not talking about a little cash flow problem. We're talking about complete business failure." I sat back down and set the envelope on the desk between us. It was thick, official-looking, with the letterhead of Morrison & Associates, the law firm I'd used to handle the paperwork. "She came to our house on a Tuesday night," I continued. "Do you remember that? Crying so hard she could barely speak, begging for help. Said she'd do anything, sign anything, agree to anything if I could just save her business." Tessa nodded slowly. "I remember. She was a mess. She was desperate, and desperate people make desperate decisions." I opened the envelope and pulled out a document that had been notarized, witnessed, and filed with the state of South Carolina. So when I agreed to bail her out, I made sure there were some conditions. I handed her the contract. Tessa took it with shaking hands and started reading. I watched her eyes move across the page, saw the exact moment when she reached the crucial paragraph, because her face went completely white. "Miles," she whispered, "this says..." "It says that in exchange for the $25,000 I provided to save her business, plus an additional $15,000 for operating capital, Bree signed over 51% equity in Sacred Space Yoga Studio to me." I leaned back in my chair. "I'm not just her benefactor, Tessa. I'm the majority shareholder." The document slipped from her fingers and fluttered to the floor. "You own her business?" "Majority shareholder," I corrected. "Which means I have controlling interest in all major business decisions. Hiring, firing, lease agreements, expansion plans, profit distribution, all of it goes through me." Tessa was shaking her head like she could make this information disappear through sheer force of will. But she's been running it like it's hers. She makes all the decisions. She makes day-to-day operational decisions because I've allowed her to. But legally, contractually, I own 51% of everything. The equipment, the client list, the lease agreement, the business name, all of it. I picked up the contract from where it had fallen and flipped to the signature page. There it was in black and white. Bree's flowing signature right next to mine, with a notary seal and 2 witnesses. Completely legal, completely binding, completely forgotten by everyone except me. "How could you not tell me about this?" Tessa's voice was barely above a whisper. "How could you not know about this? You were there when she signed it. You were sitting right there at our kitchen table when I explained the terms to her. I thought it was just paperwork, like a loan agreement or something." It was paperwork. Very specific paperwork that transferred ownership of her business to me in exchange for the money I was providing. She read it, Tessa. Her lawyer reviewed it. She understood exactly what she was signing. Her lawyer, the one I paid for, because she couldn't afford legal representation, remember? So I hired Morrison & Associates to represent her interests and make sure she understood the contract completely. Cost me another $3,000, but I wanted everything to be completely above board. Tessa was looking at me like I was a stranger. "You've been keeping this secret for 6 years?" "I haven't been keeping it secret. I just haven't been broadcasting it. There's a difference. The paperwork is filed with the state. It's a matter of public record. Anyone who bothered to look could have found it. But Bree doesn't know. Bree knows. She just chooses not to think about it. It's easier for her to pretend she's an independent business owner than to acknowledge that she's essentially been working as my employee for the past 6 years. I pulled out another document from the envelope, the operating agreement we'd signed along with the equity transfer. According to this, as majority shareholder, I'm entitled to 51% of all profits generated by the business. I've never claimed that money, never asked for it, never even mentioned it. I've been letting her keep 100% of the profits from a business I majority own. Why would you do that? Because family comes first, right? Because we help each other out. Because that's what good people do. I met her eyes. But apparently, being good people only applies to me. Everyone else gets to be selfish. Tessa was crying again, but this time it wasn't just sadness. It was the kind of crying that happens when you realize the world isn't what you thought it was, when the foundations of everything you believe turn out to be built on quicksand. Miles, I swear I didn't know. I mean, I knew you'd helped her, but I had no idea it was like this. No, I said. You didn't want to know. None of you did. It was easier to just assume the money fairy was taking care of everything. I put the contract back in the envelope and returned it to my safe. So when Bree made her little joke about me being the most useless person at the table, she was essentially insulting her own business partner. The person who owns the majority stake in everything she thinks she's built. What are you going to do? That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? What exactly was I going to do with this information? For 6 years, I'd been content to let Bree run her business and pretend it was entirely hers. I'd been the silent partner, the invisible investor, the guy who owned everything but claimed nothing. But things were different now. Now I had been publicly humiliated by someone who owed her entire livelihood to my generosity. Now I was done being invisible. Well, I said, I think it's time I started acting like a majority shareholder. Sunday afternoon rolled around like clockwork, and for the first time in 8 years, I was actually looking forward to. Not because I expected anything pleasant, hell no, but because I knew this was going to be the last time I'd ever sit at that table as the family punching bag. Today, I was walking in with a purpose that had nothing to do with keeping the peace. I dressed carefully for the occasion. Nothing fancy, just clean jeans and a button-down shirt, the same kind of outfit that had been earning me condescending looks for years. But this time, I made sure to bring something extra, my leather messenger bag, the one I used for business meetings. Inside was a single manila folder containing documents that were about to change everything. Tessa had been walking around our house like a ghost all weekend, barely speaking to me except to ask if I was really going through with this whole thing. She still didn't seem to understand that there was no going back from here, no magical reset button that would put us back to the way things were before her sister decided to publicly humiliate me. The drive to her parents' house was dead silent. Tessa stared out the passenger window while I focused on the road, both of us probably thinking about how this afternoon was going to play out. I had a pretty good idea what to expect. Bree would be furious about the missed rent payment, probably ready to tear into me the moment I walked through the door. Her parents would be confused and defensive. Graham would try to stay out of it entirely. What they weren't expecting was for me to come in swinging. We pulled into the circular driveway of that big house on Trad Street, the one with the historic marker out front and the perfectly manicured garden that required a full-time groundskeeper to maintain. I grabbed my bag from the back seat and followed Tessa up the front steps, past the columns that were probably older than my entire hometown back in Georgia. Patricia answered the door with her usual air of gracious hostility, the kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. Miles, dear, how wonderful to see you. I trust you're feeling better after. Well, after last weekend's little misunderstanding. Little misunderstanding. Right. Like her daughter hadn't just spent 8 years treating me like hired help before finally saying the quiet part out loud. I'm feeling great, Patricia. Thanks for asking. The living room was set up exactly like always. Everett in his leather chair with a bourbon, Patricia perched on the sofa like she was posing for a magazine photo, Graham sprawled in the corner chair, trying to look invisible, and Bree, sitting ramrod straight with her arms crossed, radiating anger like heat from a furnace. She didn't waste any time getting started. Okay, Miles, what the hell is your problem? She said before I'd even sat down. Do you have any idea what you've put me through this week? My rent bounced, my insurance payment failed, and now my landlord is threatening to review my lease terms. All because you decided to throw some kind of tantrum. I set my bag down next to my chair and looked around the room at all these people who'd been benefiting from my generosity for years while treating me like garbage. My problem, Bree, is that I'm tired of being disrespected by people I've been supporting. Supporting? She let out this bitter laugh that sounded exactly like her sister. Miles, honey, you help out sometimes, but let's not pretend you're supporting anyone. I built my business from the ground up. Did you now? I opened my bag and pulled out the folder. That's interesting, because I have some paperwork here that tells a very different story. Everett set down his bourbon glass with a sharp clink. Now hold on, son. I don't know what kind of documents you think you have, but I want my company back, Bree interrupted, her voice getting shrill. Whatever weird financial arrangement you think you have with my business, I want it stopped. Today, the room went quiet. Even Graham looked up from his phone. Your company? I said, keeping my voice perfectly calm. Bree, I don't think you understand the situation you're in. I opened the folder and pulled out the equity transfer agreement, the same one I'd shown Tessa a few days earlier. What you built from the ground up was actually built with $40,000 of my money, in exchange for which you signed over 51% ownership of Sacred Space Yoga Studio to me. I handed the document to Everett, who put on his reading glasses and started scanning the pages. I watched his face change as he read, saw the exact moment when the reality of the situation hit him. This can't be right, he said, but his voice had lost all its authority. It's completely right. Notarized, witnessed, filed with the state. Your daughter has been operating my business for the past 6 years. Bree lunged forward and snatched the papers from her father's hands. This is bullshit. You tricked me into signing this. I was desperate. I wasn't thinking clearly. You had a lawyer, I said. I paid for your lawyer. Morrison and Associates reviewed every line of that contract to make sure you understood exactly what you were agreeing to. Patricia was looking back and forth between the document and my face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. But Miles, dear, why didn't you ever mention this before? Because I was trying to be a good family member. I was trying to let Bree run her business and maintain her dignity while I stayed in the background. But apparently, staying in the background just made it easier for everyone to forget that I exist. Everett stood up, trying to reclaim some kind of control over the situation. Now see here, boy, I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but you're tearing this family apart. No, Everett, I'm not tearing anything apart. I stood up too, meeting his glare with steady eye contact. I'm the one who's been holding it together. I reached into my bag and pulled out another stack of papers, bank statements, canceled checks, transfer confirmations. Everything I'd shown Tessa, plus a few additional documents I'd printed out for this specific occasion. Graham's DUI legal fees, your property tax bailouts, Bree's business loans, Tessa's nephew's education fund. 8 years of financial records showing exactly who's been keeping this family afloat while you all pretended I was dead weight. I spread the documents across Patricia's antique coffee table like I was laying out a poker hand. $47,000 to Bree, $12,000 to Graham, $35,000 to you and Patricia. That's almost $100,000 of my money that went to solving your family's problems. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. I want an apology, I said, and I want acknowledgement of what I've done for this family. Bree was staring at the contract like it was a snake that might bite her. I want my business back. Then buy me out, I said. 51% of current market value, plus the $40,000 in principal I originally invested, plus 6 years of accumulated interest, should come to about $120,000. Her face went white. I don't have that kind of money. Then I guess you're working for me now. The room exploded into chaos, everyone talking at once, voices raised, accusations flying. But I just sat there in the middle of it all, completely calm, watching 8 years of resentment finally come to the surface. The truth, as it turned out, was a hell of a lot louder than their lies had ever been. 1 week later, I was sitting in my office reviewing a grant proposal for a community college in Tennessee when the doorbell rang. Through my window, I could see a guy in a cheap suit standing on my front porch, holding an official-looking envelope. Process server. I'd been expecting this ever since the family dinner from hell, so I wasn't surprised when he handed me legal documents with my name on them. What did surprise me was how fast Bree had managed to pull it together. The woman who couldn't balance her own checkbook had somehow found herself a lawyer and filed a lawsuit in less than a week. I had to give her credit for efficiency, even if everything else about this situation was completely insane. The complaint was exactly what I'd expected. Plaintiff seeks damages for defendant's unconscionable exploitation of plaintiff's emotional distress and financial desperation. In plain English, she was claiming I'd taken advantage of her when she was desperate and tricked her into signing over her business. It was creative, I'll give her that. Complete bullshit, but creative. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same woman who'd spent 6 years treating me like I was invisible was now accusing me of being some kind of manipulative mastermind who'd orchestrated an elaborate scheme to steal her yoga studio. According to her version of events, I was apparently both completely useless and diabolically clever. I called Sandra Wu's office that afternoon. I'd worked with Sandra before on some contract disputes related to my consulting business, and she had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when clients tried to pull fast ones on her. She was exactly what I needed for this situation. Her office was in one of those converted historic buildings downtown, all exposed brick and modern furniture that cost more than most people's cars. Sandra was waiting for me in her conference room when I arrived, already reviewing copies of the documents I'd faxed over. "So," she said without looking up from the paperwork, "your sister-in-law is suing you for being too generous." That's a new one. Apparently generosity is a crime now if you document it properly. Sandra finally looked up at me, and I could see that predatory gleam in her eyes that probably terrified opposing counsel. "Miles, I've been practicing law for 15 years, and I've seen every kind of frivolous lawsuit you can imagine. This one doesn't even make the top 50. She spread out the equity transfer agreement on the conference table, pointing to specific paragraphs with her pen. "Look at this language. In exchange for the sum of $40,000 provided by Miles Granger, Sacred Space Yoga LLC hereby transfers 51% equity ownership to Miles Granger." It's crystal clear. No ambiguity, no complex legal jargon, no fine print. Her lawyer thinks he can argue emotional distress. Her lawyer can argue whatever he wants. But emotional distress doesn't void a legitimate business contract, especially when she had independent legal representation during the signing. Sandra flipped to another page. "Which reminds me, you said you paid for her attorney? Morrison and Associates. $3,000 for them to review the contract and explain her obligations." Perfect. So she can't claim she didn't understand what she was signing, because she had a lawyer specifically hired to make sure she understood. And she can't claim coercion, because you provided her with independent counsel. Sandra was practically grinning now. "Miles, this is what we call a slam dunk." Over the next hour, Sandra walked me through her strategy. We'd file a counter motion for summary judgment, basically asking the court to throw out Bree's case without even going to trial. We'd present the contract, the legal representation records, the email chains showing Bree's grateful acceptance of my help, and the 6 years of business records showing she'd operated under the agreement without complaint. "The beauty of this case," Sandra explained, "is that your sister-in-law is essentially arguing that contracts don't matter if you regret signing them later. If that were true, every business deal in America would be subject to buyer's remorse lawsuits." We also discussed Bree's chances of success, which Sandra put at approximately 0. She's claiming you exploited her emotional state, but the timeline doesn't support that. You gave her independent legal counsel, you documented everything properly, and you never tried to exercise your ownership rights until she publicly humiliated you. No reasonable judge is going to see exploitation in that pattern. The discovery phase was going to be particularly brutal for Bree. Sandra had already requested all of her business records, communications, and financial statements for the past 6 years. We were also demanding depositions from everyone who'd witnessed the original signing, including her parents and the lawyers at Morrison and Associates. "Here's what's going to happen," Sandra said as we wrapped up the meeting. Her lawyer is going to spend about 3 weeks reviewing the evidence, realize his client lied to him about the circumstances, and then quietly suggest she drop the lawsuit before it gets to court. And if she doesn't, then we bury her in facts. We show the court exactly what kind of person files a lawsuit against someone who saved her business, and we make sure she pays our legal fees when this is over. Sandra was right, of course. 3 weeks later, Bree's lawyer called Sandra's office requesting a settlement conference. Apparently, once he'd reviewed all the documentation and taken depositions from the witnesses, he'd discovered that his client's version of events bore no resemblance to reality. But I wasn't interested in settling. I'd been quiet and accommodating for 8 years, and where had it gotten me? It was time for some public accountability. The Charleston County Courthouse felt like stepping into a movie set. All marble columns and polished wood, the kind of place where justice was supposed to happen whether you had money or not. I sat next to Sandra at the plaintiff's table, watching Bree and her lawyer huddle together across the aisle, probably going over their story one last time. Bree's attorney was younger than I'd expected, probably fresh out of law school and desperate enough to take a case that any experienced lawyer would have laughed out of his office. He spent the first 20 minutes painting Bree as this helpless victim who'd been manipulated by her cunning brother-in-law during her darkest hour. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, gesturing dramatically toward Bree. "My client was facing financial ruin when the defendant swooped in with what appeared to be a generous offer of help. But hidden in that help was a trap, a contract designed to steal everything she'd worked for. It was a good performance, I'll give him that. If I didn't know the actual facts, I might have felt sorry for her myself." Then Sandra stood up. She didn't waste time with emotional appeals or dramatic gestures. Instead, she walked over to the evidence table and picked up the equity transfer agreement. "Your Honor, this case can be resolved very simply. Did the plaintiff sign this contract? Yes. Did she have legal representation when she signed it? Yes. Did she operate under this contract for 6 years without complaint? Yes." Sandra presented our timeline like she was teaching a history lesson. The recorded phone calls where Bree begged for help. The emails showing her gratitude after I saved her business. The bank records proving I'd never taken a dime of the profits I was legally entitled to. 6 years of evidence that I'd been the most hands-off business partner in history. "The plaintiff claims she was tricked," Sandra continued, "but the evidence shows she was helped. She claims she was exploited, but the record shows she was rescued. And now, when her benefactor has finally asked for basic respect, she responds with a frivolous lawsuit. The judge, an older black woman with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense, cut through everything with surgical precision. She reviewed the contract, the legal representation records, and the pattern of behavior over 6 years. "Ms. Reed," she said, looking directly at Bree, "you accepted these funds knowing full well what the terms were. You had independent counsel explain those terms to you. You operated your business under this agreement for 6 years. This court finds no evidence of fraud, coercion, or unconscionable conduct on the part of Mr. Granger." Bree broke down crying when the judge ruled in my favor, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure rage, the fury of someone who'd just discovered that consequences actually exist. Tessa had been sitting in the gallery during the whole proceeding. When I looked back at her after the verdict, she was already gone. No congratulations, no acknowledgement that justice had been served. Just empty space where my wife should have been. I walked out of that courthouse with my vindication and my legal victory, but somehow it felt less like winning and more like finally waking up. For months later, I'm sitting on my back porch with a cup of coffee and a watercolor palette, watching the morning light filter through the live oak trees in my yard. It's Thursday, which means absolutely nothing to me anymore except that it's another day I get to live exactly how I want to live. Tessa moved out 3 weeks after the court ruling. She packed her things while I was at a client meeting, left her keys on the kitchen counter, and disappeared into whatever life she thought she deserved. No dramatic confrontation, no tearful goodbye, no acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, she owed me an apology for 8 years of letting her family treat me like garbage. The silence that followed was the most beautiful sound I'd heard in years. I paint now, not because I have to impress anyone or because it serves some greater purpose, but because I want to. Watercolors mostly, sometimes acrylics when I'm feeling ambitious. Last week, I finished a series of Charleston Street scenes that actually captured something real about this city. The way the light hits the old buildings just right, how the shadows fall across cobblestone streets that have seen more history than most people can imagine. Bree's yoga studio is still standing, barely. Turns out when you have to actually pay your own bills instead of relying on your invisible benefactor, running a business gets a lot more complicated. I haven't exercised my ownership rights, haven't demanded my share of the profits, haven't interfered with her operations at all. I'm just letting her figure out what independence actually costs. She'll probably make it. Bree's a lot of things, ungrateful, entitled, cruel when she thinks she can get away with it. But she's not stupid. The question is whether she'll learn anything from this experience or just find someone else to subsidize her dreams. I cook dinner for myself every night now. Real meals, not just whatever was easiest after a long day of taking care of everyone else's problems. Tonight, I'm making shrimp and grits, the way my grandmother taught me when I was 12 years old. Simple food, Honest ingredients, no pretense required. Sometimes I think about dating again. There's this woman who works at the coffee shop downtown, always has paint under her fingernails and reads actual books instead of scrolling through her phone. We've talked a few times about art, about Charleston, about how sometimes the best conversations happen with strangers. Maybe something will come of that. Maybe it won't. For the first time in 8 years, I'm okay with not knowing. Because here's what I learned. When someone calls you useless, they're really telling you how useful you've been to them. And that's your cue to walk away and discover who you are when you're not carrying everyone else's weight. I'm lighter now. Free. And I wouldn't trade this.